Are tools like ChatGPT going to make software engineers obsolete? We'll discuss this with two software leaders and cover real use cases and applications of AI. We have Shesh Babu and Paridi joining us. Shesh Babu is an engineering manager at Temasek in Singapore, and he leads teams that develop software products for investment groups. Paridi Prohit is the director of software engineering at Best Buy, where she manages the omni-channel communication platform. Thank you, both of you, for joining. I'm going to ask Paridi first. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work you have done or you are doing with AI?
Thank you for having me here, Mamta. Has been as much as a hype it is right now. It really has been with us for quite a while. I think it's at least, if not more than 50 years, right? So it has been evolving since then. When I was in my bachelor's, that's when we kind of delved into this world a little bit, designing neural network to recognize text. That's how the interest started, because that was at a very low scale, and then continuing that in my master's and doing a thesis on speech recognition. And over the course of my various employments, I got opportunity, thankfully, to delve into it in various ways. Before my current role in NBC, I was doing machine learning for title matching. And then currently at Best Buy, as you know, Gen AI is really popular, especially in conversation platforms.
Yeah, I totally agree with Pradeep. So it's been there for many years. It kind of ebbs and flows, right? So there are times where there is a lot of hype about AI, and then it dies down and it resurfaces and then it dies down again. Over my career, I've worked on multiple data science slash ML projects. The most recent one was very similar to what Paradi is saying, the title matching. So it's called entity resolution. And right now the hype is all like Gen AI and LLMs.
Can you explain, Shesh Babu, what is the difference between AI, Gen AI, LLM, ML? We hear a lot of these terms, and most of the times they're being used interchangeably.
Yes, yes, of course. So AI is like a very broad term. And when people use AI, they could be referring to anything like the LLMs could be AI, like the computer vision could be AI, normal ML models, the tree-based models, they could be AI as well. It's about who uses that. There's usually a joke in the industry where if you're doing a PowerPoint, then you'll use AI. And if you're talking to engineers, you use something like data science or ML. So it's a very vague term, like you mentioned.
Yeah, it's funny. We have a joke where, can you make the day without saying data or AI? And we haven't been successful so far. So, as an acronym, it's like artificial intelligence, right? It's our attempt at emulating ourselves, really. And we are still getting there. So, I was talking to someone recently about currently with large language models, which is what generative AI and all that has made popular. Even with that, if you have to do same intensity work as we as people do, it's very resource intensive and it will be very expensive. So there's still work going on with how to make it fragmented, because we have so many things that we think in our brain before we reach a conclusion or an answer. And those are all tokens, if you would consider in AI world. In order for us to care for like a million parameters and reach a conclusion in AI, so given that, I think we're still at the infancy. There's a lot to be done to reach at the intelligence level of human, even though we are so excited about.
That actually brings me to my next question, which has been in news. Is AI going to replace software engineers with Devin coming in, another AI autonomous agent coming in? There is this scare that, hey, software engineers will not be needed in the future. So both of you are in the software industry. I would love to know from you, first of all, is this scare real? And if not, how is AI affecting software engineers and software engineering?
I think it's like a golden state for us software engineers with AI. I don't think we need to be scared of it. We really do need to embrace it. If anything, for developers, it's like a boon. So much time that's wasted trying to research things, which is almost like a pattern that's already been done by someone somewhere. And you take that pattern, modify it, and implement it for your own use case. So With AI, you can leverage it so beautifully, provided the context on space where you are working on, and making our work do happen faster. Because at the end of the day, whether you are engineer or you are businessman or you are working for a common goal for the company where you are. So ultimately, doing things efficiently and faster is beneficial for all, including engineers. We are not anomaly. If you look 10 years down the line, maybe the shape of the work changes, right? But we are not going away. We're just becoming better.
So there's a lot of anxiety programming community, right? The new models are coming up, new agents are coming up. I think it's mostly about the fear of getting replaced. And the fear that people have is there would be a time the product managers go to Jira and create a ticket, and the AI agent in the background, it just automatically translates that ticket to software, right? But if you think about it, software engineering is like more than just writing code, right? You need to talk with multiple people, right? The developers in your team, developers in other teams, designers, users. There's so many communication needs to happen. There's a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of handover of tasks. And usually these things are done in meetings, in Slack channels, or just face-to-face communications, right? So when PM writes a Jira ticket, it's usually just like a one-liner or like a short description. But as a human being, since you're exposed to all these meetings and you talk to people, you have the context on what exactly to implement. The ticket could be just about add a download button, but you know what that download button is, like how it should look like, where it should go. So if you have AI that can look at this vague description and actually can look at the entire organizational context and can deliver the product. So it means that the AI is closer to AGI, is actually like human level intelligence. And at that point, the whole society should be afraid, right? Everyone will be out of jobs, right? So that is just like the worst case scenario in my mind. But the best case scenario is it's a force multiplier. So a couple of years back, we had a lot of tools in our IDs, the IntelliSense, the code completion, where you type in the object name dot and it lists down all the methods, right? And you also have things like Stack Overflow search or Google search, and you have a lot of other tools. But as a developer, you need to manually go through this, and researching it will take a long time. Now with the LLMs, they can suggest entire lines or even like functions, right? Instead of going to Google and GitHub issues and Stack Overflow to search, they actually help you save a lot of time. You are just making the coding part more efficient, and software development is more than coding. So the future for software development is pretty bright. Please don't be afraid.
One of my colleagues is ideating a app, Sean Brown, and his company is called Before Code, an AI augmenter for product. Going to the level of the stakeholder, asking them to write down the stories and doing the work of the product because that AI would be trained on the context of the company. So it's not just us as engineers whose lives gonna be benefited. It's all aspects of the industry that's gonna reap this benefit. So there's really, to your point, there's really nothing to be worried. Just enjoy this beautiful tool that we have collectively created, essentially, and make our lives better.
I agree with both of you. It's more than just coding, it's the whole context. It's the conversations that we have, the clarifications we get with product managers and other stakeholders. I saw this meme recently, which said for AI to be able to do a software engineer's job, the requirements have to be clearly defined. And I think we're safe for a while. Different things that a human, a software engineer goes through in reasoning will be just enormous amount of tokens. And with vector databases, if we were to vectorize all of them, it will just takes that much compute power and will not be worth it. Shishbabu, can you define what AGI is?
To simply put, it's human level AI. So whatever you think that humans can do, it can do.
So it can reason like a human. It can get to almost performing at a human level. For someone who just wants to get started in AI, this is a pretty new field. Can you share some tips? How does one get started?
I think that for engineering, once we have our core concepts clear, implementing those concepts regardless of how the tools are changing, it becomes very easy. So for engineers who want to be in the field of AI, they really do need to make sure they thoroughly understand exactly what it does and how it does it. So it's such a deep field that it's not necessary they'll understand each aspect of it, but even understanding that, okay, I don't exactly understand how the neural networks are created, how the weights are assigned. It's okay. But you get to that level where you acknowledge, okay, from beyond that, I may need help of other people. And at least getting to that level of maturity and understanding about the concepts is very important. And again, we are in amazing era, right? You have the information at your fingertips. There's so many videos and tools available through various resources that you can learn pretty much anything that you want to and understand where you want to stop as well, right? We all have our limitations with time and space, and that's true for whether you are a new learner, whether you have experience. That's the way I have approached it.
I think for engineers going into the AI field, we need to differentiate between the AIs here, right? The traditional ML versus the LLMs. I feel that LLMs are much easier to get into because it's like they have abstracted away all the work that goes inside, right? So you can just like hit an endpoint, you can create a prompts, and then you can get in results, right? So it totally changed the way we do NLP tasks. So for a software developer who wants to get into AI, the LLMs would be the easiest approach. They can learn some of the models and other concepts like RAG and vector databases. You can still use a combination of formal learning and project-based learning. If you have a pain point, let's say I want to do computer vision, like whenever I do this or do this, I want the system to detect and needs to do stuff, right? And if you want to do that, you pick a narrow field like computer vision, and you don't have to develop that from scratch, right? There are so many libraries available. It's okay to just use libraries so that you get a sense of what that is like. And when you build that, you learn about the limitations of that. Maybe certain positions won't work, certain conditions don't work, right? So you learn about that. Parallelly, I think that the formal way of learning is also important, where you use Coursera or books or YouTube videos where like people go through that topic from end to end, chapter by chapter.
Very good advice. So, what I'm hearing is you can learn both formally and informally with different methods. You don't have to learn everything all at once. You will get overwhelmed. So, pick a narrow field. What do you want to focus on? Pick a use case. There's a lot of videos, there's a lot of courses online, and I will link some of them as well. Another thing I wanted to add is just because AI, we keep hearing it everywhere, you have to see if it's even the right use case for AI. Is it really needed? Or can you solve it with the methods we already have?
So there's a lot of hype for LLMs these days. You guys might have seen the Gartner hype cycle. So basically what Gartner hype cycle is, when new technology is introduced, people will just hype it up and then people starts investing a lot of money. They are purchasing software, like actually investing in companies. When they actually implement that, they sort of realize that this is actually not that useful, right? Then it goes to the bottom. So for LLMs, I think we are still in the hype slope. And internally, we do have a framework where we say we always go for rules-based. Rules-based is like the normal, like if else, those kind of stuff, right? And if you can't do that in rules-based, then you try the classical ML stuff, the logistic regressions or tree-based models. And then if there is a use case where LLMs shine, like for example, LLMs are really good at summarization, then you just go for LLMs, right? Don't just directly go for LLMs. Like if you want to make a decision and write an if else condition, like don't ask LLMs and write an agent for that.
Right.
You need to have a common sense way of implementing things.
I really like the decision framework, and I think the companies should have that, a formal way of deciding when to use what type of algorithms, whether it's standard or whether it's AI based. And having that tiered level is really important. Is it rule based? Can you do it with fine tuning, or do you need to go to LLMs and train your own models? And then when we are training our own models, or even when we're fine tuning, a question usually comes up with data. So my question to both of you is, how do you navigate those data challenges, including security and privacy?
The biggest challenge with this training is data cleaning, right? It's just the most hated things of every data scientist in ML. And people think that the ML engineers, they just focus on building the models. That's not the case, right? Most of the time, they just working on the data cleaning, and the data is most of the time is very dirty. It's wrong or it's duplicated, it's missing. So there's just so much things that you have to do. And you spend a little time on models and more time on this data cleaning and data engineering, right? So I would say that's the biggest challenge. There's a lot of new innovations that happened in recent years, like the privacy based training, things like that.
Babu, your comment reminded me of the use case that we used to joke about in my previous company because it was NBC Universal, right? So they're like talking about movies. And it's very interesting because if the movie has someone say rock, right? People will talk about the movie in reference to rock. So if you were just looking at the comments and you didn't have the context, you wouldn't really know what exactly they're talking about. So that was one of the interesting problems that they were trying to solve. And how do we triangulate what set of movies they are talking about? Especially in forums like Reddit, right? It becomes very interesting. So there's no shortage of data per se, but there's a shortage of clean data. The ML model that you pick actually decides the cost that you will have when your cloud bill comes in, right? The bigger the model, the more expensive it is to execute and help you in your development. So, what is the cost? Whether it's the time, the money, and everything. So, decide based on those parameters which are important for you, your company, your use case. Security is actually every company's biggest headache at this point for AI because there's interesting issues that came about when we saw the leaks happened. Some of the proprietary information got leaked. General rule of thumb, how to use the technology for the use case is very important. So let's not use the latest and greatest when there's security is of utmost priority. Make sure you are grounding the model, make sure you are like non-permissive, make sure that it's given a boundary, and beyond that boundary it can't do anything other than say that sorry, I don't know the answer. It can't make up the answer. So restricting how it responds.
We are also seeing things just like when SQL came around, there was SQL injections, and now I'm reading about prompt injections. So just like with APIs, we give it boundaries, what it can do, what it cannot do internally. Equally, we need to have guardrails on what we allow the AI to do with the data. What do you guys use for your personal productivity and efficiency?
If I have to write any important email or any document of importance, I use a tool called Quillbot along with Grammarly. I am mom of teenagers, so they will create these pamphlets or things like that for their school projects. And they will extensively use the AI augmented apps, which generate images. At work, we have embraced GitHub's Copilot. Google has come out with Duet AI. So exploring various venues and leveraging it cautiously.
I recently rolled out GitHub Copilot to my team, and everyone loves that. It's not just the code suggestions, but it can also do like the workplace wide search. It also has the chat GPT right in your IDE. I find that like pretty useful. I also use other image generators and music generators, right? I have some niece and nephews, and I usually send them AI generated images about dolls and things like that. There is also a new AI generated music that you just give some a small prompt and it can just generate like a song. It's pretty good. So it's mostly for fun. For professional use, I mainly use Copilot. I tried using Perplexity. It's also quite good. I'm also trying to build my own personal search engine like Reddit and the OpenAI APIs, but those things are like personal stuff.
One of my favorite use case of ChatGPT is you give it the list of ingredients and ask it what recipes. I met someone in one of the networking events who says that every day that's how they make their food now.
So there's actually some AI tools that are focused on recipe generation. And I actually have a video on my channel, and you can give it the ingredients you have. You can also give it particular options like vegan, vegetarian. You can give it restrictions. So there's different kind of tools that take into account your weight and height, what goals you're trying to achieve. So I'll link the video to check it out if you are into cooking. So the speed that we are progressing is pretty amazing and scary at the same time, which brings me to my next point. Are there other risks that you see and any strategies that you have for using AI?
When it comes to Gen AI, the biggest risk is when you're developing agent use cases, like where the AI agents can do stuff in the real world. So you should put that in a box so that it doesn't do what it's not supposed to do. And apart from that, for the normal use cases like summarization, you should have proper grounding and also proper evaluation from frameworks to make sure that it's not producing hallucinations. There are also other things that you need to worry about, like if you're building chatbots, what is the toxicity level of response? Can it respond with fake news? It's a pretty new field, the Gen AI security. There are like a couple of companies out there, they are creating AI firewalls, right? Instead of API firewalls, where the API gets inspected, so your prompts and your responses get inspected.
Patience is one of the big things that comes into my mind, especially in the space that I am currently at, right? So, in the communication platform, primary thing that you don't want to happen is that you do not want end users to be informed incorrectly. So these are some real life implications of a bot hallucinating. And this is where we triple test, quadruple test before we launch anything in production. Test in production as well with low usage and things like that. Those are some of the mitigation points. And making sure that we have the firewalls in place to make sure that we are not exposing ourselves to the risks of bad parties, bad actors that you have to kind of address and make sure that you protect ourselves.
So all of the things that we're already aware of, like man in the middle attack, the injection attack, DDoS, we need to have throttling protections so that we don't get bombarded. So making sure all of the best practices that we employ for software in general, we be more mindful with the AI bots because it has other things like hallucinations. It's only good as the data you provided. And then there are compliance and regulation issues with GDPR saying, and then with AI, we're getting more regulations. The policies and the laws are also catching up because this is evolving pretty fast. Speaking of evolution and such a fast evolution, having said that, how do you guys keep yourself up to date? And what advice do you have for others who want to make sure they're staying up to date with the advances in AI?
There are many resources available. We are in that hype cycle. And if you open Twitter or chances are 9 out of 10 posts you see is about Gen AI. So there is no shortage of information, but the signal to noise ratio is pretty low, right? Everyone is just like saying the same things again and again. And if there is a new breakthrough and whether it's actually a useful breakthrough or not, people will just hype it up. But they usually miss a lot of nuances, even big nuances. One of the big issues that we face currently is the latency for LLMs. Sometimes the responses take more than like a minute, right? It's super slow. On one side, you have this reality. On other side, you have the influencers typing it up. So you need to have hands-on experience to separate the useful bits from the superficial bits.
Your response on the speed is spot on. It is very real problem. It does depend on how many number of tokens you are giving your AI, because those are the parameters that it needs to evaluate, work out the logic, and respond. Any person, any engineer or product technologist can keep themselves up to date is think about what they're doing at their work and see if AI is the right approach for the use case that they are currently focused at. If that's not the case and they really want to leverage AI, then think about what they're passionate about. So, you mentioned about the food use case, taking into account what are your goals for your health, right? That's a beautiful use case and how to leverage AI in that space. Second thing is talking to people. Nothing can beat that. Making sure you engage with your network in active dialogue about your interests and knowledge, curiosity about AI. And as you all talk about it and you trust and verify the sources, And that's how I learn, by talking about it, listening to people, digesting it, evaluating it.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do here in this channel. What are the best practices? What's been working? What's not working? So people can understand that. And the more you listen to the real stories, you can try to take away that signal to noise ratio. Because yes, there is a lot of information out there, but what can you trust? And talking to your network, talking to your support system, talking to people in the industry, it's going to be key going forward, because things are evolving, things are changing. And both of you mentioned a really important point, is we don't get lost in the hype. Focus is very, very important. Focus on what you're doing. Thank you to both of you for your time. This is one way of learning about AI, just learning the actual use cases people are using in their workplace and for their personal efficiency as well. So I really want to thank you both for your time.